Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Compton at Dalton White Farms, and I'd like to say hello and happy Food Week, local Food Week to everyone, and thank Farm and Food Care for the opportunity to speak to you today and show you around our asparagus farm. So I will give everyone a minute to log in, and then we'll start talking about everyone's favorite early spring vegetable, asparagus. Beautiful day here. We finally have some good weather and some sunshine and some warm temperatures. It's about 25 degrees today. Little windy right now, which wind is never an asparagus farmer's friend, but we've got some sunshine and warm temperatures, so that's good. Okay, so I'll start by telling you a little bit about our operation. As I said, my name's Rebecca Compton, and I am an asparagus farmer in the Delhi area, which is in Norfolk County. Norfolk County grows about 70% of all of the asparagus that is produced in Ontario. We currently grow about 3,500 acres of asparagus in Ontario, and this is the main growing region, I would say, probably in Canada. There is some grown across the western provinces and also in Quebec, but I would say the majority of Canadian asparagus is grown here in Ontario. So I'm today standing in our asparagus field. We grow about 100 acres of asparagus. This year though, however, with the labor challenges and everything that's happening with COVID, we're only harvesting about half of our crop. So we're harvesting approximately 50 acres this year. So of our two locations, we have one, our older field is about 20 years old, and I'll kind of talk to you about how asparagus develops and how the field, the life of the plant and that sort of thing. And then this is our younger field that we're harvesting this year. And the majority of, or pretty much all of the asparagus we grow is a variety called Millennium that was actually developed here in Ontario at the University of Guelph. So it's exciting to be growing an Ontario specific variety that was developed here in Ontario specifically for our growing region. So as I mentioned, asparagus is a perennial crop, and so we grow it year after year. So when you plant an asparagus field, it's definitely a commitment. Millennium is a variety that has proven to have a very long life. So like I said, we are harvesting asparagus fields now and plants now that were planted in the late 90s, 1999, and in the early 2000s. So when you plant an asparagus plant, you're actually planting the crown. And I'm going to switch the view here if I can, as I've kind of, see if that works. There we go. I've dug down to a plant. So asparagus is grown in a crown. And so I'll give you a look over the field. I don't know if you can see all of the spears. Growing an asparagus field kind of looks almost like the moon. So pretty much as far as you can see is basically asparagus here. And so the crown, which is up probably about 12 inches into the ground, develops, and it continually shoots out spears. So as you can see here, all of these spears are coming from the same plant. So we've got two that are very poor looking. Those would have been hit by the frost several weeks ago at the beginning of our season, and they're just degrading. This spear here is of a marketable size and will be cut probably later this afternoon. This one isn't quite ready, but probably will be by later tomorrow afternoon when the guys come back over it. And then all of these stubs are spears that have been produced and have already been harvested this season. And so those just degrade. And then these ones, and if we dig down, you can see these new spears that are coming up and will be harvested in the next several days. So I would say an asparagus crown has the ability to put up probably 50 to 60 different shoots of asparagus. So that's why a couple weeks ago when we had frost damage, it took out a portion of the crop, but given time, the plant rejuvenates and it can grow very, very quickly in warm conditions like we're having now. So on our company page, Dalton White Farms, last week, I tracked the growth of a spear over about 3 days to show how it grew and developed and how quickly these spears can grow. And so I'll also show you a good example of, there's 3 different colors of asparagus that we produce here in Ontario. Or sorry, not in Ontario necessarily. Green is predominantly the variety or the color that we produce here in Ontario, but all green asparagus is also white asparagus. So the only difference between white and green asparagus is that white asparagus is harvested while it's still underground. So basically when you're in a white field, the rows are mounded and you cut the spear under the soil before it sees the sunlight, where when we let it grow above the soil, it turns this beautiful green color. And then the purple asparagus is a varietal difference, and so it's just bred to have that purple color, which you can see here throughout the entire spear. But typically the purple asparagus cooks out green. So when we plant an asparagus field, you typically don't harvest it for the first few years. So like I said, we're sitting right now in a very young field, and we've harvested this for a few weeks already. So we'll go over it every day, sometimes twice a day when it's very, very warm out, and just to make sure that we get the quality of spear that we want. So I'll talk about that in a minute, but that means very, very long days for us. So this is a very, very busy time in the season, because essentially asparagus doesn't stop growing, and so therefore we can't stop working. So we have very, very long days this time of year. This piece of field that we're walking up to now is actually, this is our youngest piece, and it has, I will switch it back around now, it has, we've let this field go. So you don't want to overcut it in its first few years. So this field is, I believe, 2 years old, and so the rule is only to cut it for a week or two. And so as you can see, when we stop cutting at the end of the season, the asparagus grows up into this beautiful fern, and so it will become very tall, up to 7 feet tall. And so how this works is, my dad has always described it as the crown is kind of the battery, and this fern is essentially like the solar panel. So you need, the fern collects sunlight and develops sugars that all summer long, and that goes back into the root and is stored. And then when the plant comes out of dormancy in the spring, those sugars are mobilized and start shooting the spears out of the ground. So we harvest it then for 6 weeks, and as the plant becomes kind of more tired, we want to stop typically near the end of June. So we typically harvest from the first week of May, depending on Mother Nature and weather, until the last week of June, and then we allow the plant to rest for the rest of the season, and that allows it to recharge. So if you cut too long, you'll be damaging your harvest for next year. So it's important to allow the plant to rest and recharge. So I'll just give you kind of if I can get a good view of kind of what the fern looks like right there. I had a question here, what type soil type is really good for growing asparagus? So asparagus loves Norfolk County because we have very sandy soils here, and so it really likes that sandy loam. So I'll talk a little bit kind of about grading asparagus, and then we'll go down and see some of it actually being cut. So I'm not going to be able to take you, unfortunately, into our grading barn today. With everything that's happening with COVID, we're currently having to wear masks and shields, and we have barriers up everywhere to ensure that our workers are maintaining the 6-foot distance, and it's so not very conducive to videoing, unfortunately. But basically, once the asparagus is harvested, it's put into lugs, and it's transported on a truck to our barn. It's then cooled, because we want to make sure when we're packaging asparagus, it's going in cold. That helps to maintain shelf life. And it then goes onto our grading table. It's washed, and the ends are trimmed, and we trim to about 9.5 inches, and then it's graded and packed in approximately 1 pound boxes. So if you want to make sure that you're buying Ontario asparagus, I'm just going to switch you back. This is the box that most people, or a box similar to this, that we're packing into, and you'll always be able to say the Foodland Ontario logo. So as I was saying, we pack out several different grades of asparagus. Hopefully we can see this. You can see this is what we grade out as a short or a tip, and so it is basically anything less than the 7 inches is what we pull out. Then we have a slim, which is very, very thin asparagus, and our general guideline on our farm is basically if it can go through one of these holes in the side of a box, it's a slim, or it's a skinny. And so these are very popular grade at our farm market, and people really like them. They cook very quickly. And then you've got kind of our two first grades. And so what makes a spear first is that it's relatively straight and it has what we call a closed head or a closed tip. And so we pack several different diameters of first. So you can see these are very different diameters there. So we pack not only by quality but also by diameter. And then these two would typically be what you would be seeing in most of your grocery stores here in Ontario. Then we've got what are my favorites, the jumbos. So I think if you asked any asparagus farmer what their favorite grade of asparagus would be to eat, they would say a jumbo. And from my perspective, I don't have a lot of time time of year to cook, and so there's probably the same amount of eating and cleaning in one jumbo as 5 skinnies. So you might as well just cut and prepare one spear, I figure, and get the same amount of eating. And so these are wonderful to eat cooked on the barbecue or wrapped in bacon or prosciutto. So you can I just typically brush them with a little olive oil, put them on the grill and cook them like a hot dog, and then we basically eat them with our fingers at our house. And so that was one thing that a lot of people cut off the ends of the asparagus. And so when you're grilling it and eating it that way, I tend not to, or if I do, I just cut off the very, very bottom. And then I essentially use the bottom of the asparagus as my handle so that I can eat the whole spear up until when it does get a little bit woodier, and then just throw out. So you're not just throw out basically what you haven't eaten, and then you're maximizing your asparagus. And then our last grade is the humble second. And so these are basically just spears that aren't quite perfect. And so they're crooked, or they're going to seed, which is what we're talking about. So it's just starting to go, it has these it's just, I call it, say it's getting hairy, but they're just kind of, these are the fern branches that are starting to come out. And so when we see that decreases the quality, and that typically happens when it's hotter and the spear is growing very quickly, which is why we have to cut the field so often and get across it 1.5 days. Or also with the second, the tip just has been misformed for some reason. And so these spears are really great for soups, for freezing, for pickling. Anybody that wants to do preserving, this is a great time of year to get them out and get some asparagus from your local farm and get some asparagus. And so again, if you're in your grocery store, this is kind of what a bunch of asparagus looks like. And if you look at that elastic band that's on there, it says Product of Canada, and it has our grocery code, which is 4080. So that's how you can ensure you are getting Ontario asparagus, because currently there is imported asparagus coming in from both Mexico and Peru. So if you want to make sure you're eating local, look for that elastic, and that will indicate local asparagus. So there's a question. When the plant is 3 years old, do we harvest all shoots or just the thicker ones? We tend to harvest all of them because we can grade them out and just sell them as different grades. So we do harvest pretty much all of the spears that come out. And so I think there's a bit of a misconception that the thicker spears are older and woodier, but that's not true. As you can see, I'll try and find another spear here, a good example in the field. All of the spears are the same age, and it's simply the genetics of the plant that put up whatever size spear that one typically happens to be. So again, I'll switch back and show this plant has put up, some spears that are very, very thin, and this one's thicker, and then we have some kind of medium. So they're all the same age. It's just how the plant has developed, basically. So if you're looking to purchase some local Ontario asparagus, you can, if you wanted to come out to the farm, most of it's in many of the retailers right now. But if you'd like to come out to the farm, you can go to asparagus.on.ca, and that has a map on the Asparagus Board's website that will show you where your closest local asparagus farm is that you can come out and buy some asparagus from. So we'll walk out and we'll see some of the asparagus being harvested now. And so I know a lot of consumers one of the major complaints is that asparagus is a very expensive vegetable, and one of the reasons that is because it is so incredibly labor intensive. Like I said, we have to harvest our field every day, sometimes twice a day, and every spear is hand cut. It's not a vegetable that lends itself to mechanical harvest, and so every spear is hand cut individually with a steak knife, and then is put onto the grading table, and every spear is again hand graded individually and hand packed. So it's such a labor intensive crop, which is why it has that cost in the grocery store, unfortunately. And again, you'll see behind me as we go, there are some areas of some weeds. So my dad won't be happy showing that part of the field, but basically our practice is that we, prior to harvest, about in early April, we do a pre-emergent herbicide before the plant has come out of dormancy, and then we do no chemical applications until after the harvest is complete. So asparagus is a very, very clean vegetable for that reason, because it never has any, typically, but we don't put any chemical application onto our actual spears. I think I have another question here. Just give me a second. Oops. Oh yeah, I think it was just about where to buy local asparagus. So yeah, on asparagus.owen.ca, and it will also have a lot of great recipes there with chefs we've worked with in the past on how to prepare it in different ways. So I'm going to switch it around again now, and as you can see, this is an area of the field that hasn't been harvested yet, and so you can see the spears are much bigger in this area than up on the hill where it was harvested earlier today. So these are much taller. So the general rule, like I said, we're cutting, looking to cut spears that are over 9 inches tall. And kind of the art and science of it right now is making sure, riding that fine line between taking a spear too early or leaving it too late and then having it turn to second the next time we're over it. So as you can see, this is a big spear, and fortunately it will be cut right now because it's just starting to branch out. So that's a good time to get over it and get these spears cut. So we're very fortunate that asparagus is it's actually the first fresh field crop of the spring. So I know a lot of people really wait for that and are very excited to have it. So it's kind of really nice being an asparagus farmer, because people are always so excited to have your crop, and it's such a sign that winter's over and summer's on its way, and it's a real fun crop to be involved with, because people see it with so much joy. So I'll switch it back, and you can watch some of the guys cut this. So we have Jamaican workers. Most of them have been coming up to our farm for close to 20 years. We also have Mexican workers that work in our pack barn. We've only been able to get about half of the number of people that we normally get. And some of our Mexican workers have been coming for up to 32 years. So cutting asparagus is definitely an art form, to know which ones to cut and which ones to leave, and which size to take it at. So these guys have been doing this a long time and are very good at it. So they ride these machines basically. And you can see the difference, hopefully, as my phone catches it, in a row that has just been harvested versus a row that hasn't been harvested. You can really tell the height difference in the spears. And so by tomorrow morning, that one that was just been cut will be close to the same height as this one, so that's how quickly it grows. So I think that's pretty much everything I was hoping to talk about. I hope everybody's learned a little bit about asparagus. If there's any other questions, feel free to type them in and I will get them right now and we can quickly answer them as I go back to the truck. Like I said, I'd love to take you guys into the grading barn today, but that just isn't possible, unfortunately. And I really want to thank Farm and Food Care for this opportunity. And it's been really great seeing everyone, and hope you're able to get out this week and grab some fresh local asparagus and put it on your barbecue and enjoy it. So thanks everybody for this opportunity to talk to you today. Bye.